Good morning, folks. Welcome to Now You Know, and we're doing, I think, a third in the series of shows that we're doing on Somerset Woods properties. And today we've come all the way up to Concord, Maine, and we're at the Young Preserve, which is located on Fletcher Mountain Road. And for those of you who have no idea where Fletcher Mountain Road is, it's on the Concord side. Its axis is about a half mile up from the bridge that comes over from Bingham, and it's an absolutely beautiful property. And I'm fortunate today. I've got three folks here that are going to give us kind of a history of everything. And to my far right is Ron Webb. Next to him is Chris Young. And probably you're pretty aware of Jack Gibson. He's been on some previous shows, Jack Gibson. And let's start with Ron. Ron, you are not on the Somerset Woods trustees, but you are a nephew of Jim Young, who ended up donating. Was it a donation or purchase, Jack? Donation to Norcross, right?
Yes.
And then Norcross, explain to me who Norcross is.
Well, the Norcross Foundation is an environmental organization. They help fund certain projects and do things like that. And a local man from Mercer, Warren Balgulian, who was a supporter. Warren unfortunately passed along. But he was a supporter of Somerset Woods trustees, and at one point he was on the board of Norcross. And at some point, Jim Young became a little disillusioned with Norcross because they weren't doing anything up here on this wildlife preserve. And so Warren facilitated the transfer of this property to Somerset Woods trustees from the Norcross Foundation. So that's how we ended up with it.
So Jim initially donated to Norcross, and where are they? They're out of Massachusetts and New York and so forth, and they had it until what, around 2017 or so?
No, I think it was, well, that could be right. 5 years now, yeah, that's probably right.
Well, 2017, and then with Warren Balgulian's help, who is a tremendous conservationist in the area. Matter of fact, where I live on Bigelow Hill in Skowhegan, he had the pond, the fire pond, right across from me, and preserved that for many years. So I became quite familiar with Warren for that. But that's how Somerset Woods came in the picture.
Yes.
And at that point, you were dealing some with Jim Young. You had a chance to know him. He's passed on a couple of years ago, I believe. But
our executive director at that time, Nancy Williams, she was really the primary contact with Jim at that time, and they fortunately hit it off. And Jim explained what he would like to do. This is a wildlife preserve. There's no hunting or anything, but it's open to public. Plus, we have some trails here. Chris will talk to you about that a little better. But Jim was a very generous man and was happy to see us get it. And this kiosk that we're standing in front of was dedicated with Jim here, and he told us some good stories.
Now, Ron is Jim's nephew, and before we went on the show, Ron told me he actually grew up in Long Island. We won't hold that against him, but he came up a number of years in the summertime and so forth, and he had a chance to tromp around the property a lot with Jim Young, and so tell us a little bit about Jim Young, the man. I mean, I read his obituary, and you told me it could have been a mile long. It was very impressive, I must say.
Well, he did a lot. He was a professor Girls College in Turkey.
Yeah.
He started out there, then he went to Biddeford. He was another professor, and they did away with the chemistry department. That was his department. He let him up to then he went up to Bangor and started a lab up there, worked for the state at the University of Maine.
Forensic lab, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
forensic lab. He was a forensic chemist. He did an expert witness on demolition, explosives, and alcohol, anything.
Yeah.
He had a number of cases. He worked both sides. Once it became his own operation, so to speak, he worked for both sides,
Yep.
defense and prosecution.
Now, that was Jim the businessman. Now, tell us a little bit about Jim, the environmentalist, humane. He dealt with dogs and elephants and all this stuff. Very interesting.
The elephant part came. That was a few years ago. He signed up for 3 weeks in Thailand to work on an elephant preserve. Do the dirty work.
Yeah.
That's what he wanted. He made some friends up there, mostly down there, I should say.
Yeah.
Mostly elephants, but that's okay. He could speak to all animals.
And he loved dogs. He was involved in the Humane Society.
He loved his Newfies.
Yeah.
His last dog was a poodle, but she was just as precious to him.
I know he was involved with Appalachian Trails. And
Yes, he did the Appalachian Trail back in 2000, I believe.
Yeah, and explain. There was a little extra degree of difficulty in that at the time.
He started out, everything was fine. He had all the stuff delivered to him, and they'd stop at different post office and pick it up. And then somewhere around New Jersey, I believe, his leg, I think it was, started swelling up, and so he went to a nearby doctor, emergency room. He told me he'd been bitten by a brown recluse. And he says, well, I can still do the trail, right? I can, yeah, if you want to lose your leg, go ahead. So he had to stop there around New Jersey, but he finished it up the next year.
But he had an artificial knee. He just had an artificial knee put in or something before this.
Knee, yeah.
Yeah.
I happened to be hunting with him. I think it was that in the fall, and I was with him when it went.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was down on the ground. We barely made it back to his camp.
But he sounded like quite a character too. He was a storyteller.
Oh,
I
yes.
guess he could tell long, vivid stories apparently. And can you recall anything that any of his storytelling?
One has to do with his profession. He was going to, I believe it was Greenville, to check on some police that called his last and wanted him to look at some plants they thought were pot. He went up there and looked at the pot, looked at the plants and said, oh, that's Japanese maple.
Yeah.
So, long and short of it is, the Greenville police had to replace the man's Japanese maple because they hacked them all down thinking it was pot.
Slight error.
Yeah.
But he was a traveler. Well, of course, he was involved, I guess, in the Korean War.
Yeah, he was
He
in the
got
Korean War.
multiple
That kind of
medals.
messed up his college plans for a while, but when he
Yeah.
got out, he got onto the GI Bill and went from there. Traveling, I can't think of a place he hasn't been really. He's been to all the continents. He's made 2 trips to Russia, I believe. Once before the breakup of the Soviet Union and once afterwards.
Yeah.
And he's been to Africa at least twice, once to South Africa and once to Tanzania, I believe.
I take it some of that had to do with his saving the elephant patch.
No, it was just
No?
just a safari type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was a man of the world,
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
and we're very fortunate that he donated this to Norcross, and eventually Somerset Woods came in the picture. And you guys are apparently a lot more aggressive on this property than Norcross was. We won't complain too much about Norcross, but you guys are doing quite a bit. Chris, you're one of the stewards of the property, along with Patty Hagar. And Patty was supposed to be on the show, but due to rain when we were supposed to tape it, she couldn't be here and can't be here today. So tell us a little bit what you're doing.
Well, actually, Patty and I and her husband Brad and my wife Becky have spent quite a lot of time here working on clearing trails, laying out plans for additional trails, and we actually picked up where fellow trustee Tom Hendricks had started, and he really took the initiative to start laying out trails here and making signs. Shortly we'll see the pond close by here. He built a bench so people could sit and relax and enjoy that scenery, and he had laid out a loop trail that we plan to continue to work on, and several of us have actually crossed over the western boundary of the property onto Weyerhaeuser land, and they own the land that actually encompasses the peak of Fletcher Mountain,
Okay.
which is about almost 1,700 feet in elevation. And when we first visited and climbed to the peak, it was an April day. There was still snow on the ground, but I was amazed at the view from up there. You can actually see Mount Katahdin from the peak. You can look up the stretch of Wyman Lake between Moscow and Caratunk all the way to Kearney Brook, where the picnic area is, and shortly before where the Arnold Trail takes off across towards the Dead River. And Patty has been instrumental in establishing a number of geocaches on Somerset Woods properties, and one of them is located here at Young's Preserve. We won't give you any hints, but it has been visited several times, and geocaching has become a popular activity and a good way for people to get out and see and hopefully enjoy some of our properties. We have, as Jack mentioned, we've put up new signs, marking it as a wildlife preserve, and which is in line with Jim's wishes, and my wife and I were here last December working on clearing some of the trails, and after a fresh snowfall, we saw plenty of deer track and moose track, and so I'm sure the wildlife hopefully are appreciating the effort to keep it wild. And right now the loop road that Tom Hendricks laid out comes back to the road below here, and one of our goals is to enclose that loop so it's no longer on the road, it is entirely in the woods. And we'll be working on that. We'll also be working on marking the trails better with blue marking paint, and with the property as large as it is, there's a lot of potential for additional trails, and we are also in contact with the Weyerhaeuser folks to get permission to establish a trail beyond the Young's property boundary to the summit. And as I said, it's a good steep hike, but it's well worth it. And a lot of Somerset Woods properties are located with a focus on the Kennebec And the pond that we're going to see is actually a tributary of the Kennebec, so it's within the watershed. And it may be one of the properties that's the furthest north that Somerset Woods actually owns. And it's in a location where we hope a lot of people will visit, and there are a lot of attractions nearby that people can take advantage of too, with the scenic byway close by, Houston Brook Falls just up the road.
That's right.
And the historic Arnold Trail, whitewater rafting not all that far away. So it's in an ideal area to hopefully attract people that want to enjoy this part of Maine and enjoy going onto a property where they have a good opportunity to see wildlife and not have to worry about hunters. As you can see now, it's a quiet spot. It's far enough removed from the highways that you can really appreciate the peace and quiet that this property offers.
Absolutely. And again, I don't know if I described it very well for those who want to find it. I mean, the best way, if you're coming up from, say, Skowhegan, you go up to Bingham and you take the left onto Bridge Street. Is it Bridge Street? Mm-hmm. And then you come over to Concord, and once you get to the road here, you take a right. Maybe about a half mile up on the left is Bluff Road, which, by the way, there's no sign for, but it's Bluff Road, and then you go up Bluff Road, and then Fletcher Mountain Road veers off to the right about 0.2 in from Bluff Road, and you come up. We're about, maybe 2.5 miles from there, past
Right after the power line.
past the Jim Young residence at 431 Fletcher Road. And then you'll see the kiosk, and which will give you access to trails. And one trail is is it half mile maybe into the Beaver Pond?
I don't think it's even
even
maybe
that.
100 yards or so.
Oh, okay, not
Right,
even
directly behind us.
Oh, good. So we don't have to walk that far. That's good. So you got now. So Jack, why was it important for Somerset Woods to be involved with this property? I think I'm getting a pretty good indication from what Chris said, but what are some of the unique aspects of this property that makes it so valuable to Somerset Woods?
Well, it's certainly in a unique spot, being on the side of Fletcher Mountain.
Yep.
And it gives us a bit of a toehold here to further our mission. We do not own any wildlife preserves on our other properties. This is the only wildlife preserve we own. And of course that's in accordance with Jim's wishes.
Right.
And so we certainly are honoring that, and we'll keep it that way. And so it's just a nice chunk of land that extends from a beaver bog down through the woods behind us to not quite at the top of Fletcher Mountain. Something I don't know if how many people that watch your program, if they're hunters.
Millions.
Okay. Well, if they're hunters, they might be interested to know that on the back side of Fletcher Mountain, the largest deer ever shot in Maine was shot on the back side of Fletcher Mountain. It dressed out at 355 pounds.
Yeah.
And it wasn't weighed until 3 or 4 days after it was shot. So it had
It's like shooting a moose.
It was a big animal. I mean, I think Hinckley, somebody by the name of Hinckley shot it. They call it the Hinckley buck. So that's a bit of unique history here, which may not be here nor there. But if I could share a little anecdote that Jim told us when we dedicated this kiosk on that day, he regaled us with a few stories. And one I remember, and I think he said he was 10 or 12 years old, and his father worked on the log drive, and his father's one of his specific duties, he was the dynamite guy, the log jams.
Yep.
And so he kept dynamite in his barn or garage, whatever, right there at his house. And so one day, Jim and one of his cronies decided they were going to take a little dynamite up to the top of Fletcher Mountain and see what would happen.
Yeah.
And so they did exactly that. They took some dynamite from his father's garage his stash there, went to the top of Fletcher Mountain, and they planted it in somehow down in the soil or in the rocks or whatever, and they lit the fuse and ran like hell. He said. So we jumped behind a boulder to protect ourselves, and then when it went off, he said it was an unbelievable rust-colored cloud. He says there must be a lot of iron in the top of Fletcher Mountain because it was quite something to see. He said. Of course, they didn't get hurt, fortunately, and everything came out good. But I always remember that story. I can't imagine, a 10 or 12-year-old now getting their hands on dynamite sticks.
Wow. Yeah, that's a little dangerous, I would say.
Yeah.
So Fletcher Mountain is obviously a big part of this property, and it's pretty steep from what I heard.
It's a good climb, and it's an expanse. The mountain itself covers a large area, and the slope on the backside to the west slopes, I'm going to say, for at least a mile. But on this side toward the Kennebec, it's much less gradual and a rigorous climb. We at one time when we were laying out trails, we thought it maybe had potential for cross-country skiing, but I think it's a little bit too steep. More of a snowshoe in the winter.
Yeah.
And hiking in the summer. One of the trails that's laid out that Tom actually started, follows a stream, and there are a number of places where the water cascades in small falls.
Yeah.
Very, very, very pleasant. And a smaller stream off to the south that flows pretty much year-round as well. And we've got trails on alongside both of those that meet up actually close to the west boundary of the property. And then, as I said, Weyerhaeuser owns beyond that, but they seem very amenable to allowing Somerset Woods to have a trail to the summit, which would be not an extremely challenging hike. Not so steep that you have to go hand over foot, but a rigorous climb. But the view at the top is well worth it.
Yeah. So you don't go up with flip-flops, you wear hiking boots, right?
Well, that's what I would recommend.
I have seen people do amazing things wearing flip-flops and going up trails, but it would be hiking boots for me, for sure. And spraying yourself for ticks this time of year, I would say, would be important. Are they pretty well, the trails that you have, both the loop trail and the trail that goes to the Beaver Pond, are those pretty well marked out now?
They haven't been completely permanently marked, but in areas where they're not, they're flagged with flagging tape. And I'm not sure, Patty's not here today, she was going to start doing some painting. Some of it we may see that's already been completed. But before that, some flagging tape and tags were with arrows were put on trees marking the trails, and the trails that are here at this point have been cleared, so that, there's no question it's an established trail, and for people that want to make a short trip to the bog and just enjoy the peace and quiet there, it's less than 100 yards behind us, and
I think we're going to make that trip.
I would definitely think it would be a good place for people to see.
And it's a pretty expansive property. It's I think 204 acres of land, and
it's 200, just around 200 acres.
Yeah,
That's what I believe.
yeah. So good sized property.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
And now, Ron, you obviously growing up here, and this is before all the formal trails were made. Did you guys kind of have your own trails to get around here?
No, it was pretty open back then when I was.
Plus
here.
trees.
Oh yeah, this was all a big field.
Or was it? Yeah.
Right down to the bog where it was going.
Yeah.
Used to be a kind of a rite of passage for us, his nieces and nephews, and my cousins, to climb Fletcher and get to the top. we made it, and I can remember there was an observatory up there.
Huh.
Where they used to have somebody during World War II, I guess.
Okay.
There was a number of them in Maine,
Oh,
and there was a
interesting.
plaque up there commemorating the observatory itself. And there was actually left over a flagstaff that was made from one fir tree, I believe it was, and then another one tied to that to make a flagpole.
Oh, interesting.
And I always wondered if any of that was still there. I guess not.
When we were up there, the only marker that we saw was the Geological Survey marker in the summer.
Unfortunately, the plaque had a few bullet holes in it.
Yeah. You have a kind of a special family place on the property, right? I think they had a memorial service for Jim
Yes.
a year ago, and it's a series of boulders,
Yeah, it's
Ice Age remnants, I'm
big,
sure.
yeah, it's little patch of boulders, so to speak, and the kids, my uncle and his siblings used to play up there, and they each had, at different stages in their lives, each had their own little fort or house, and eventually it became quite a favorite spot, and I had an aunt that wanted her ashes scattered, and that was back in the 80s, and then in 83 my mother wanted the same thing, so
Yeah.
she's up there, and now Jim is up there.
It was a pretty special family spot then.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Must have been fun growing up around here.
Oh yeah, it was great. I love coming up here.
You guys hellions as kids?
Excuse me?
Were you hellions as kids?
Yeah, kind of. I won't try to hide it. I am from Long Island. I
Yeah.
brought a little with me. Not too much.
We don't need to get into those stories all that much.
No, we won't.
Anything else here that you guys could think of? Otherwise, we can move to the Beaver Pond if you want.
I would like to thank Somerset Woods trustees for helping me clear the path and find the rock up there, the memorial.
Yeah.
We took a day, Patty and her husband and a couple of friends were there. We went up and made our own little trail. It's right off this trail over there.
Okay.
We plan to keep that trail cleared, but the actual path to the memorial lots won't be marked on our trail
Right.
maps.
Yeah, that's kind of a family,
in
special
deference to the
family
family.
thing.
Mhm.
Yep. 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 Any other geological things that make this property important, or things you can mention?
Well, there's what do they call it, an erratic. There used to be a field across from the cottage up there, a big boulder that we used to climb on.
Yeah.
It had a handhold.
Yeah.
Just right so you could climb right up there.
Oh yeah.
But now it's right next to the road, but you can't see it.
So we're standing on what would be the left side of the road as you drive in, and so the east side, okay, and the Beaver Bog is behind us,
On the east side.
east side, and on the west side is that circular trail, right?
Yes.
And that just to give people a little bit of
Yeah.
perspective on things. as
If
to
I
where
may,
we-
Chris, I'd like to thank Chris and Patty as stewards of this property, and of course
Absolutely.
Tom Hendricks,
Yeah.
previous to you folks. I mean, they've really done an exemplary job, and very dedicated to this, and just we thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And a lot to be able to have you guys to get over.
And I will say, certainly, I think Tom Hendricks would be missed, because I know he's doing yeoman's work for you guys. I know he's probably sitting with a drink in his hand on a beach in Florida right now, but
I think that's very likely.
my guess is that he's probably doing some volunteer work for conservation
Yeah, I bet he is.
organizations down there
I
as
wouldn't
well.
be surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
He was
But
a great board member.
yeah, but well-deserved retirement, I think.
Yeah.
So, but you've got some other ones willing to work, so that's a good thing. So why don't we take a break, and we're going to move to the Beaver Bog location. Okay, folks, we just completed our strenuous hike into the Beaver Pond. And by the way, it's pretty much all flat ground for those who want to walk in and see this. And it's through a beautiful wooded area to get here. But we're now out on the Beaver Pond. And Ron, you want to describe the area to us a little bit?
Yes, this is the Beaver Pond, and right around the corner here is the dam. You can't see it from here, but I think the dam's been there before man was.
Yeah.
It's a big dam.
And unfortunately, the fishing here is not so good, right? Ron told me before we went back on the air that it's just chubs, folks, so probably bringing your fishing pole would not be the best thing you could do. The walk is real nice, though. And so, you know, you grew up here, so what was it like 40, 50 years ago? You said it wasn't nearly as wooded, correct?
Correct. There was a lot of fields. What the path we just walked down to get to the pond here was a big field. My uncle and my grandfather used to hay all these fields in here.
Yeah.
Back in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
That's how they had 3 milk cows. Maybe there was more back then. And it was kind of like it's been farming for them because of Depression.
This is during Depression times?
Yeah,
Okay.
Depression and before the World War II.
You would, looking at this now, you would never know that this was a farming place 70, 80 years, 60, 70 years ago, whatever it was. Even
Cut
more
my
than that.
teeth on the tractor on
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. I went up to my uncle one day. What's the chances of me driving the tractor? I think I was about 10 or 11.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's pretty good.
So some of this was farming land.
Oh yeah.
What'd they grow for crops back then?
At one time, before grandmother and grandfather lived here. This probably goes well back in the 1800s, maybe the 70s. They used to grow wheat in here for troops.
For the troops back then?
Yeah, back during the Revolutionary
Oh
War.
my God.
That's just what I was told. I could probably dig through some stuff and find something.
Now this property had been in the family for 100 plus years, right? Or something like
I'm not sure
that?
how my grandfather and my grandmother got a hold of this, but originally it was about 500 acres that they owned.
500, yeah, at
And
one
they
time.
kept kind of adding, subtracting land for years.
So my understanding is Jim Young's parents, or his father's family, his grandparents gave it to his parents, or grandparents of the parents gave it to the parents, and then it went to Jim. Is that correct? Something like that?
That sounds correct.
Sounds like I'm making it up, but I think that's what I read.
No, I just don't remember the full story of how Jim got it back when my grandmother died. They were going to split the property up between the 4 siblings that were left in the family, and Jim just wanted the land. He didn't want much to do with the homestead, so
Yeah.
2 of them kept the homestead. My mother and Jim kept the land. Jim made a deal with my mother.
But he was very passionate about this place,
Very passionate.
and he wanted it forever wild, a wildlife preserve.
Yeah.
But apparently he wanted some interaction with the public too by allowing trails, and that's essentially what Somerset Woods is doing now. Is they're preserving it and perpetually as a wildlife preserve, but also developing trails on the property so people can access its beauty.
Yeah. So that's exactly what he had in mind.
So I think the goal is being accomplished, Jim. I think he would be happy with this.
Yeah. He's real happy.
And the one little thing you mentioned earlier off air is that there was actually not only agricultural land, but there was a town here too many years ago.
There was little farms that dotted the valley here. And this valley stretches from where you came off the tower all the way down to engine.
Okay.
There was, at the end of the valley, there was a little place called Concord Corner. I don't know what was there. It must have been a store. Right, not too far from where we are, there was a couple of buildings. A man by the name of Tom Howes owned it last. But originally that building used to house some soldiers back in the
Revolutionary War.
And the schoolhouse was there. When I was a kid, we used to go inside the schoolhouse and get all the way up to the second floor, so it was in pretty good shape. And my mother went to grade school there for a few years. Until she got in high school, then she had to ski to Bingham in the winter.
She would ski to Bingham to go to
High school in the winter, yeah.
That's a pretty good ski.
Yeah. She had an old, I don't know where they came from, but I had them for a while. They were nicely made skis, and they had like a strap around it.
Yeah.
The way she went.
That was real dedication to going to school. You young kids now, you hear that. And so where does this Beaver Pond actually go?
Well, it doesn't get much wider than this. It kind of snakes around up through there. Probably just before those taller pine trees, pretty much the end of it.
Okay.
The brook actually starts behind that pond over there.
Where is Martin Stream from here?
Okay, this is what's called, this would be the beginning of Martin Stream.
Oh, okay.
You look on any map and they'll call this Martin Stream.
Okay. And Martin Stream feeds eventually into the Kennebec River. Where is
a
that?
much bigger stream.
Okay.
The Kennebec is east of here, over on the other side of the bluff.
Is there better fishing down the way here?
It used to be down farther on this. We used to catch trout because this whole Martin Stream at this end is just one log after another.
Okay.
And so you get down there a ways, and I don't know about now. We used to go down there. The going was tough to catch some trout.
Yeah. Well, it's an absolutely beautiful spot, and in front of us, behind the camera, is a bench. So it's just, what'd you guys say, about 100 yards? A little more than 100 yards, pretty much flat ground walk in here, so anybody can do it, or most people can do it. And then there is a nice bench to sit and contemplate nature, I guess, from there. It's just a really, really nice spot. So,
Ron, do you have any stories about Governor King, the first governor of the state of Maine, who had a hunting camp down there?
No, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? I've seen pictures of him. I really don't know much about it, but I think he was the first governor in the state of Maine.
Huh.
And had a hunting camp down the road.
oh, interesting. Any more history you want to give us, Ron? You've given us quite a bit already.
Oh, there's a lot to hear, but we don't have the time. But the history that I've experienced here has been, been wonderful for me as a child growing up, and then spending a lot of time with Jim up here in the later years. He'd show me a lot of things about this area and tell me a lot of stories. Some I can't really repeat. Of the goings on in this valley back in the day.
Well, I'll tell you, we're very fortunate that this land is being preserved. Unfortunately, we don't have time to walk the property for you today, but we do fortunately have an in-house drone that will fly over the property and give you folks a pretty good perspective. Certainly, hopefully, a good view of Fletcher Mountain. And I understand streams and waterfalls and everything coming off that mountain. It's pretty geologically diverse property. Talk about the what animals are on the property. I expect to almost see a moose out here as I'm looking across.
You probably stand here long enough, you will.
Yeah.
I've seen them down here, not in this spot, but over against those trees there. I've seen them. There's a lot of deer in the valley here too.
Yeah.
Beaver, obviously.
Obviously,
There's
yeah.
A lot of beaver.
Yeah.
I've seen marten. That was way back. I don't think they're around anymore.
Yeah. Is that where the Martin Stream name came from, or is a Martin family? Do we know?
Spelled different, but it could be.
That's true. A different spelling. That's true.
It's a diverse property anyway. At one time, when Jim first got a hold of the property, he was in touch with the Warden Service, trying to sell them on the idea of this would be a good spot for them. And they said they were kind of looking for a spot like this, to train the wardens. But because of they can't, it's against their religion, so to speak, to post the property for no one.
Okay.
Because that's what they're all about, is hunting and fishing.
Yes, absolutely.
So that kind of fell through.
Yeah.
That was back in the very beginning when he was looking for someone to take this land over.
Well, as it turned out, it worked out pretty well for him.
Yes, it did.
It went to Norcross, and unfortunately they had a member on their board that approached Somerset Woods to manage it, and with Chris Young and Patty Hagar as stewards, it sounds as though it's going to be very well managed.
They're doing a wonderful job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ron, excuse me. Too many names.
That's my middle name.
Yeah, okay.
I was named
Yeah. Ron, thank you very much. You've given us some valuable history on the property. Ron Webb, who is Jim Young's nephew, and has spent many wonderful years at the property. And we were very fortunate to have Chris Young, one of the stewards of the property, and also Jack Gibson, president of the Skowhegan Somerset Woods. My goodness, I'm 45 minutes and the brain just goes. President of Somerset Woods Trustees, thank you very much, Jack, for being on. As I say, Jack has now been on probably at least 3 programs now, so we're making you famous, Jack. I think so. Well, thank you very much, folks, for watching the show, and now you know.